Welcome to the third episode of Eastern 2009 Recaps from Reality TV Warriors. My name is Michael Harmstone, and joining me as always is the Canadian who we often can't contact for 12 minutes, Logan Saunders.
Good afternoon.
And the guy who spends most of his weekends going wild with 500 bangers, David Bindley.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just a behind-the-scenes note. This is the second recap in a row where I logged into the chat room before Michael did, which has never happened before.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about why I didn't come into the chat room quickly on Monday, but you guys know what the reason was. And today I was going lock in my garage. So, plausible deniability. But Logan Saunders' time is very much a thing, and when we start recording Belkia next week, I'm sure you will be the last one in, as always.
So I was telling Bindles before you got here, Michael, because I got here before you.
Did you? You've not mentioned it.
That the first two episodes of the season were a bit of a disaster, and somehow, as soon as we get away from the Titanic, the season is no longer a disaster.
Yeah, this is a very fun episode. I forgot how good this episode was. And in fact, I think every challenge this episode got at least an A- on your challenge guide.
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I know the third one definitely did. I think
I was glancing at them this afternoon. I think all three of them got at least an A-.
So why are you asking him?
Because I'm trying to give him an opportunity to big up his stupid challenge guide that's taken 3 years for him to do an update on. Or 6, whatever it is, 6 years.
I will look it up eventually.
You need to scroll to the bottom of your page.
Of your challenge guide.
I have to go through 4 folders to get to it.
Scroll to the top of the Vidum 2009 notes, Bindles.
Yes, but I have to open the file first, Michael.
The best thing is, no one's going to get that reference either, because it always gets cut from the podcast. I do realise that the payoff of this is going to be a simple yes or no.
Yes, it was at least A- or higher.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then next week is very much not.
Yeah. Next week's a little bit rougher. I did spot that. I was mainly looking at your challenge guide to find out if you'd worked out what the maximum of that first challenge was, because, again, it's going to be an educated guess from me, I think.
Yeah. The problem is we don't find out how many coins they have.
No. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So, previously, the remaining 9 famous faces lost most of their luggage in a bid to bring the pot above zero before being split up to explore the offices of White Star Line in search of both cash and an exemption. They had a really good time trying to divide into cabins for exemption holders. Sebastiaan and Annick faced a choice. If both cashed in their exemption at the same time, everyone would be safe. At the execution, Annick saw a red screen, but she cashed in her exemption alongside Sebastiaan, and the whole group continued to episode 3.
It was odd that they showed the wheel challenge before the office in the recap. Like, I would have thought, if they'd done it all on the same day, you could kind of understand if they'd, shown it out of order. But we know they didn't because they had to film part of the office challenge at night. So it's odd.
Yeah. The more notable thing for me is that it was actually sunny enough in Belfast for Pieter Jan to step outside to do his intro.
Mm.
He got a bit of a tan.
Yeah.
A Peter Tan.
Thank you, Logan. I love that they had him do his intro in front of the church while the bells were ringing. But then you look at the clock and the bells shouldn't be ringing because it's 11:05 when he does it.
Yeah, I thought that. Very strange.
Yeah.
I think it's a hint.
No, she was in the next season.
I'll miss her karaoke talents the most.
And that's my contribution to the episode.
I remember I was in Sri Lanka talking about Vidum with a bunch of Dutch backpackers, and somehow Hind came up in conversation.
Really?
Yeah, her and Soundos.
Of course.
Because they were always baffled, how the hell do you know about random Dutch celebrities? Well, let me tell you.
And you're like, I'm 25 seasons into covering Dutch language television.
Yeah, and then they moved to another table. The Dutch fetish is one of my top 3 fetishes, guys.
Well, we knew that.
So as we said, they're still in Belfast, and Pieter Jan actually ventures outside for his intro, and he warns that they're expecting an important phone call and will go wild with 500 cars.
I think going wild with 500 cars is one of Logan's mucky videos, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it's right next to my copy of Cars with Low Self-Esteem.
Isn't Cars with Low Self-Esteem one of your your likes on your dating profile?
Yeah, that's one of the boxes.
Specifically looking for 500 cars with low self-esteem.
He just likes cars with plenty of junk in the trunk.
Man, oh, I'm cars with a loud muffler.
Please don't go for a muffler joke, Saunders.
Oh man, yeah, that's why I'm like, nope, nope. But let's put on the brakes on that for now.
We're coming in clutch. So Dennis starts the episode by saying he wasn't happy that nobody went home, and Rick said that Anik played it beautifully with her wonderful acting that definitely wasn't very transparent.
Dennis isn't happy with lack of execution. He's like, no stars. And I'm like, well, that's basically just Amazing Race Australia, isn't it?
Certainly is this season. And to be fair, Amazing Race 38.
What about Angela?
Amazing Race 38 subtitle officially is Bertram's aneurysm.
I like how every season that ends in 8 for Amazing Race US always has some weird theme. Family Edition, Unfinished Business, Social Media Edition, and now Big Brother Alumni. What's season 48 going to be? People who were voice actors for the Flintstones?
As if Bertram's going to be alive for 48.
10 more years. He can make it. He's in good health.
Yeah, he's only a boomer.
At this rate, it'll be at least 12 years. So Vivian says that she doubts that Anik was being authentic about doing so badly. Everyone doesn't suspect her then if she got a red screen. Anik still thinks that people do suspect her, though, despite her getting the red screen. And Pieter Jan immediately walks back to them, looking for 3 pairs after the execution, and they pick Sebastiaan and Rick, Vivian and Dennis, and Anik and Hans. And everyone left over comes with him immediately. It is day 4 in Belfast, and the 3 leftovers are at the finish line of the assignment, and their job is to bring the 3 other pairs to them. They're spread out over the city, waiting by phone boxes, and they get the phone numbers of the phone boxes required.
Ugh, leftovers.
More Big Brother jokes. Each pair must correctly answer a question about the location that their phone booth is in to get the next phone booth's location and be led closer to the finish line. They got 45 minutes, and each 20p coin that they have left over and don't use on a call is worth €125 for the pot if all 3 pairs make it.
That's a very valued currency.
Now, they did describe them as quarters. They're obviously not quarters, they're 20p coins. I'm estimating that there probably was about 40 20p's in Pieter Jan's hand, which makes €5,000 as the maximum for this challenge.
That makes sense. Because you've got, like, how many phone boxes do each group have to go to? Like 2 or 3, and then the pub, and then... So if you figure they've got, 5 each, and then a little bit of extra to... in case they're not there on time or whatever. I think that works out about right.
I think there's a loophole that nobody used in this challenge, which could have saved them a lot of money. All you have to do is get 1 pair to find out where the end point is.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that was allowed, and that they could have just left the other 2 sidelined and worked on whichever pair they thought was going to be most resourceful. But if everyone's going to the same endpoint, you get 1 pair to work out where the endpoint is, and you send everyone else there immediately.
I don't think that's a loophole that production would have thought of. I don't think they would have closed that loophole.
This is the sort of loophole that I was thinking of when I was watching this episode earlier and going, why did they just overcomplicate this? Because if you ring all 3 pairs, that's costing you €375 every time.
And Paula really sucks at using any sort of communication device all throughout this episode. She can't use phones. She can't use walkie-talkies. She's like my dad with technology.
And your dad's old.
He old.
This just in, Paula is an old Canadian.
Yeah, she's a 74-year-old Canadian living in a small town and listening to Bob Dylan music on a daily basis and watching baseball.
Is she a 74-year-old Canadian, or is she a sneaky Belgian?
No, I don't think she's Belgian. I feel like Belgians would do better with using phones and walkie-talkies. I think that's a common stereotype.
Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, just and I'm sure if Paula was a sneaky Belgian, I think she would have bleeded a lot by now.
I do love how sneaky Belgian has just become a thing.
even like the first little bit of this challenge where John pretty much just tells the guys to look over there to get the answer has more energy in it than the first couple of episodes, like as a whole.
Yeah.
I like how Mr. Bean was the star of this episode and was like the brains behind the operation of every challenge. Mr. Bean brings in a lot of money for them. He figured out a lot of the strategies for everybody. I mean, he had to coach Paula how to use a phone booth.
He had to help Fracku at one point too.
Yeah, where it's like, how is Mr. Bean the one that has to teach people how to use technology? And it's not new technology by any means.
Exactly. He is the oldest person, so he's probably the one most likely to have used a payphone before.
Yeah, I was thinking that. He's like significantly older.
Don't push the buttons too fast, guys.
You'll be pleased to know as well that Mr. Bean was the one that I did a bit of a deep dive on Wikipedia about earlier, mainly because I wanted to find out whether he was actually the Dutch voice of Mr. Bean just to make Logan laugh.
Oh, that's okay. And drum roll.
Unfortunately, he wasn't, but he did do. Are you aware of the Mischief Theatre Company?
No.
So they are famous for a show called The Play That Goes Wrong. They then did The Christmas Carol That Goes Wrong and Peter Pan That Goes Wrong. And they're brilliant. They're basically a slapstick theatre company. But John actually did the Dutch adaptation of their latest show, A Play About a Bank Robbery.
Oh.
I like how during this challenge, Hans takes the opportunity to grill Annick about her strategy on the quiz. Where he just asks her, did you take the test badly on purpose? And then she just says, no, I just took a really long time on it.
Yeah. And do you believe her? Not necessarily.
No.
Where are we?
They make very little progress in 5 minutes.
Yeah, so this is, I think it's fair to say, a messy challenge. There's not a lot of recapping we can actually do.
Yeah. John is basically the only person out of all 9 of them to even A, understand what's going on, and B, do anything to help it finish.
Yeah.
Like, this is a 49-something minute episode, and nearly 10 minutes into the episode, 6 of the 9 players still have not actually started the first challenge.
Like, as soon as they went through the first 5 minutes with only one pair getting contacted, I was thinking, yeah, they lost the challenge right here. That's a lot of time to just have everyone standing there idle and doing nothing. Or in Paula's case, not knowing how to push the numbers 0 through 9. And Sebastiaan, I think, may have done one of the dumbest things I've ever seen on Vidum, other than somebody going all in on a suspect on the very first quiz, where it's the very start of the challenge, because it's Sebastiaan and Rick who get the call from Mr. Bean. And they get directed to, what is it, that Queen Chapel Street?
Yep.
Yeah, Queen Street, Chapel Lane, I think it is.
Queen Street, Chapel Lane, yeah, that's the intersection. And they have this map that directs them there. And in the process of going to the next phone booth, Sebastiaan throws away the map because he's like, well, we're at the next phone booth anyway, not knowing if it's A, the correct phone booth, B, knowing that it's not even going to be their final phone booth for the challenge. And then Rick just has this look on his face like, how many drugs have you taken before we started this challenge? He outright says, you threw out the map? That's not very clever, Sebastiaan. You're in no position to make fun of Paula in the future, considering you just threw out the map.
And he is Dutch, so the answer to Rick's question is yes.
And Rick actually has to dig the map out of a garbage can, which I don't know if it's recommended to do so in downtown Belfast.
No. It is one of the dumbest things to ever happen on Vidum. I mean, it's still behind casting Euron as the mole, but it's dumb.
In terms of the contestant action, I guess I should have been more specific.
Yeah, bear in mind our introduction to Sebastiaan was him getting hooks put in his back. This is not a man who makes good decisions.
But yeah, just Rick is just like, wow, Sebastiaan, you are so dumb. You are really, really dumb for real.
At least he can carry all his groceries inside in one trip.
Very true. You can just imagine how he carries them. It's like, yeah, I've got a rack of hooks on my back. Just hang them on there. It's fine.
Yeah. This is the best way to do it. And I'm not using, and I don't even have to use any bags.
Mm.
You'll also be pleased to know that the bus station that they had to get to is no longer open.
Huh.
What is this, Amazing Race Canada, where things from older seasons just don't exist anymore?
So that actually makes two landmarks in Belfast in the past two episodes that are no longer in Belfast.
Yeah, the Belfast Wheel was the other one, right?
Yeah, that only lasted about 2.5 years or something.
Right.
But yeah, the Europa Bus Centre, as it's actually called, on Glengall Street in Belfast, closed in 2024 when services moved to the Grand Central Station.
Huh.
Why did the Belfast Wheel shut down again? Just nobody cared, or?
It was of a time where loads of cities around the world got a big wheel to try and compete with the London Eye, and then just kind of gave up on it after about 2.5 years.
Yeah. Oh, we had one for a while, but they put it basically in the dock area, and nobody wanted to see the docks.
It's the same sort of era of everywhere getting a big letter sign of the city.
Yeah.
Bitch, I Amsterdam, that sort of thing.
The London Eye and the Singapore Flyer are pretty much the only two still left.
Yeah. And Mickey's Death Wheel.
Yeah.
When was that Melbourne one around?
Probably about 10, 15 years ago. They closed it, I think, just before COVID.
I rode the one in Rotterdam, not Amsterdam. The one in Rotterdam in 2017, and there was like nobody in line for it, and I was on there for about 20 minutes, and it didn't even go up very high.
Well, I don't wish to brag, but I've ridden the London Eye with two amazing race winners.
Brooke and Scott.
Yep, Brooke and Scott took me on it.
I was going to say, I can't imagine you wanting to spend that much time in an enclosed capsule with Freddie and Kendra.
It was the most ghetto of all the capsules.
Yeah. The cost of a ticket on the London Eye is more than that taxi driver makes in a year.
These capsules just keep breeding and breeding.
They're everywhere around the world.
Original wheel opened 2008. They had to replace it in 2013, and then it closed in 2021.
Cool.
It was apparently the first one was only open for 40 days, and then they had to close for structural defects.
That sounds like Australia.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about this challenge? Particularly?
Annick's raincoat made me laugh because no one else in the entire challenge was even wearing a raincoat, and then she is just wearing this humongous one.
I am very glad that they gave us a way to tell Annick and Frauke apart in this episode.
I thought it was interesting that right at the end of the challenge, we see Vivian and Dennis walk past the sign for the Twilight Zone, which is no doubt how all of these people feel about getting a bunch of challenges that feel based on London stereotypes in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Like, because we've had a phone booth challenge, we've had the Ferris wheel. There was something else, I can't remember what it was.
The double-decker bus for
the bus, of course. So we've had, the buses, the phone booth, the Ferris wheel. I'm like, these feel like challenges they planned for London and then had to move to Belfast at the last minute.
Yeah. I mean, there's a very tenuous connection coming up when they move to Jordan, which I'm sure we'll get to in a couple of episodes. But it feels like they would have had more of an excuse to do that tenuous connection if they were in England than in Northern Ireland.
Have they ever filmed a season of The Mole around London?
No, it's too expensive.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
Even the UK version went to Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. For Vidum Cambodia, the winner got €8,000. Here for the Vidum London season, we're just going to play for this €50 plus reduce appearance fees across the board.
You get 1.5 trips on the London Eye, and then you have to abseil down.
There are many reasons that they don't film in the UK, but cost is definitely one of them, especially when it comes to somewhere like London. It's amazing that Amazing Race loves to film in London so much because it is not a cheap place to film.
No.
Or my favorite is when we were at the Belgian Mole finale last year, and then the original host came up to us, and
Who
then
you
I
didn't
was
recognize.
asking, who I did not recognize because I haven't seen the first 3 seasons, but hopefully that changes very soon. And then I was asking him, like, oh, why don't you film in Canada? And he said, you think we have the budget for that? Yeah, so.
The other major reason is it's never ever warm in the UK, ever, as we see in this Northern Ireland part of the season. So you want on Mole certainly from what Gilles been saying, you want to go to places that feel not cold and miserable when they film in like September to November time. So filming in London sort of any time after, I'd say, the early part of September would be disgusting.
I like how Paula referred to the others as when she says, like, "God damn it, idiots." And I'm thinking, Paula, you're in no position to call anybody an idiot in this episode.
And this is even before we've got to the bit where Paula says, yeah, it's episode 3. Let's just go all in on one person.
This is not a strong showing from anyone, really, but especially not from Paula.
Yeah.
And then Anik is viewed as Hans by being very good at reading maps and listening to directions in this challenge. And that he himself admitted to being incompetent during this phone booth challenge.
I think you'll find it's very good at reading maps and getting directions, despite being a woman.
Despite, yes. For some reason, that was a theme this episode. It's where they were just attacking feminism left and right in this episode. Like, oh, what? What, we're going to have 3 women drivers in this challenge?
I think we have to call them dairy girls now.
Very, very true. Yeah, so when the time runs out, obviously only Sebastiaan and Rick make it to the bus station for a total of €0 of, I'm assuming, 5,000 for the challenge.
I like how Paula says, yeah, this was all Hans's fault. And it's like, Paula, you couldn't even dial numbers on a phone.
Those in glass houses should not be throwing stones.
Yeah. And Sebastiaan couldn't tell the difference between Wellingwood, Wellington, or Wellington Wood in this challenge. Or Chapel Street or Chapel Lane. It's like, wow, there is a lot of either everyone's tried really hard to look suspicious, or there's a reason why they've only earned like 5% of the total money that's been up for grabs this season. I like how excited Mr. Bean was when Rick and Sebastiaan were the only pair, where he just runs up to them, hugging them, saying, my team made it. I'm so proud of myself.
It's like he's the damsel in distress in a 1920s cartoon.
Popeye, my hero. My hero, Rick and Sebastiaan of Bidham.
So after the challenge, they're driven to a big country house for the evening where they can fend for themselves for the whole day and night. And Sebastiaan and John's pact comes back, and Sebastiaan doubts John's intentions, thanks to Anik picking to save him as well. And Rick is listening by the door, as is Dennis. They hear John's small book being opened, and he wrote down who brought in what money.
I like how whenever they keep cutting to Rick's perspective, and all he hears is the Charlie Brown teacher.
Yeah, like, how can they not hear what the guys are saying, but they can audibly hear John's mole book opening?
Yeah.
Is his mole book one of those cards like we saw on Vidum 25 where there's just music playing?
Yeah, or there's a leather jacket inside the mold book.
There's just like a really tiny pop-up mariachi band.
John just opens his mole book and you just hear, Mexico, Mexico.
¿Quién es el topo?
So on the morning of day 5, Frauke admits that she's lost her mole book. She doesn't think that someone took it, but that she just left it somewhere because she's a klutz.
No one must know that I dropped it in the toilet.
And Dennis just basically does a confessional where he blames her for being a dumbass. But like the whole time he's in the confessional, it's like someone's dared him to smell his own finger the whole time. Like he's just got his like 2 fingers just in front of his mouth the whole time. It's there's no reason for it. It doesn't make any sense. It's just like he's doing it to win €20 for a bet.
It's a small miracle that I did not clock that, because one of you would have had an intro about 2 fingers had I done that.
Well, we know what Michael's going to fix and post this week.
And whichever one of you pisses me off most gets the 2-finger intro.
I don't want the 2-finger intro. Dear God, no.
So we get to Derry, which is presumably where the Titanic stopped for lunch or something.
They had to cut it for time. If this was a modern Vidum episode, we would have had an old exposition about it.
It is interesting that they only call it Derry. Because It's one of those hotbeds of sectarian tension that I mentioned last time, that depending on whether you're Protestant or Catholic, you either call it Derry or Londonderry, and the official name, according to the UK government, is Derry Londonderry. And in fact, if you look on Google Maps, both names are listed. It says Londonderry Derry.
There was a news article I was reading last week. Apparently, the BBC rejected a complaint from somebody who complained about someone saying Derry on Pointless. Like, because they're like, oh no, it's Londonderry. I'm like, they don't care anymore.
Well, according to appropriately, the website Dutch Goose, that I've just looked this up out of interest, depending on who you're talking to, the city has two names. Londonderry is the name used by Protestants, while Derry or Free Derry is used by the Catholics who want the city to be a part of the Republic of Ireland. So she said they're driven to Derry Londonderry from their manor house for the second challenge. I'm just going to keep calling it Derry Londonderry because it's fun. Pieter Jan tells them in the theatre lobby that he wants them back in 20 minutes and gives them no more information. And they're greeted by 7 columns of different colours and clips from the introduction to Beethoven's Fifth. There is also a microphone on stage, and John gets volunteered by the group to be the one to get up on stage.
It was nice of them to de-Horace the microphone for him.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought. I'm like, I'm pretty sure. Is that a green screen? I feel like I've seen this before.
I had a bet with myself of how long it would take us to reference Horace as soon as we started talking about this challenge, because it is one of my favourite visuals. I'm not going to lie.
Did you win?
Yes, it was single seconds, which is exactly what I expected.
Well, that's good. You only have to smell one of your fingers during your next confessional then.
Lucky me. I did not want to have to do the 3-finger sniff.
And there's the episode title.
Oh, there's so many episode titles we could do so far.
So, because a lot of people, Mr. Bean was saying, a lot of people were seated in this challenge and did nothing. So, would this be the sedentary challenge in Derry Londonderry?
Yeah. As Bindles said to me earlier, there's not a lot for us to recap on this challenge, but it is very fantastic. It's the sort of challenge they'd never do anymore, of just giving them no instructions. The only challenge that they've done that is vaguely similar in vibe to this is the old people sit down challenge in Mexico too, where they just gave them no information.
Yeah, like this is a very, very fun challenge, but it's also peak sort of the Vias de Mol era where it's like, there is one joke to this challenge, we're going to drag it out for 10 minutes. It's a fun joke, but there's not a lot here to like analyze, really.
Yeah. So John tries saying the words, but when the yellow lights up, it becomes clear that certain words light up each of the columns and spell out a sentence. And they also find out that money is the word in the orange column. And they work out the first 3, which is the money is, and the penultimate one is with. John then starts talking, and they sell 2 more words to make the money is here, but with who, as it happens. And the time runs out with Pieter Jan joining him on stage and hamming it up and revealing their missing word was who, and the money was hidden in Dennis's bag, which means they earn nothing of €2,500 for the challenge.
It's sort of amazing that Hans was basically the only person to decide to go and actually look for the money at any point during the challenge.
And then that became suspicious to everyone at the end of the episode going, oh, maybe the mole was on his knees.
Mm.
And I'm like, no, that's a few more seasons yet.
Yeah. You gotta wait for Rick to host to get that.
I said, oh, you knock him down.
Yeah, why is it so baffling that somebody would, look for the money? Like, are they just appearing it to just magically appear in their hands like it's Harry Potter?
I do love that they criticize him so much for doing that, but this is the only time of this sort of a challenge where that is not a good idea because they've deliberately not hidden it somewhere obvious. Usually this sort of a challenge has a very obvious payoff joke of, oh, it's hidden on the stage or whatever.
Yeah.
So Hans had the right idea here, just, not in the right challenge necessarily.
Yeah.
So we find out after the challenge that Sebastiaan took Frauke's book. As she's so sloppy with leaving it lying around, he wanted to test her. And he decides to put it in Hans's bag and frame him as being the mole, which will definitely have no payoff in this episode.
I loved it, like, at the end of the challenge, Pieter Jan walks on stage, tells John the show's over, and then performs, like, the entire sentence, one condescending word at a time.
Yeah, this is what I mean about him having it up. He points to each of the columns going, the money is. And it's so unnecessarily dickish as a Pieter Jan dick moment of just going, you guys are fucking idiots. And also, I'm going to really drag this out for as long as I can.
I wish he would have prefaced it by saying, "Hey, do you guys want to see me do a William Shatner impression?"
And then even after he finishes the sentence and like the money is here, but with who? They basically pause and do nothing, and Pieter Jan has to go and tell Dennis to look inside his bag to find the money.
Yeah.
Which I assume would have been snuck in there while they were on the bus because everyone was sitting upstairs and the luggage would have been downstairs.
Yeah, I'm assuming so.
And then Paula just whispers under her breath, "Oh, Dennis is an idiot."
And then sort of once they find the envelope with the money, he's like, "No, you're not keeping that. Hand it over."
And meanwhile, while Dennis is searching his bag, you just hear Pieter Jan doing his version of Shatner's Rocket Man. Rocket Man.
I was wondering while watching this, just came to me now, the fact that Dennis said, "Oh, nobody opened up their bags," because that's what he said on the bus, and then nobody opened up their bags during this this challenge either. And I was thinking, you know who Imanuelle could have smuggled her illegal substance with at the airport? She should have picked Dennis.
Did you pack your bag yourself, Mr. Storm?
Yeah. Did you even check to open up your bag before you took out your luggage here, Dennis?
There was a very helpful woman from Suriname who helped me pack my bag.
Yeah, TSA. Do you know anybody in Suriname, Dennis? Well,
So when they return to the manor house, they find an envelope waiting for them on the dining table, telling them to form a group of 3 people who have good oversight and another group of 3 who never lose their way. Dennis tries to implement some group discipline and puts the responsibility to a vote, but then ends up getting frustrated and walking out of the room. And Hans just suggests that they draw names for it. And they pick Rick, Dennis, and Paula as the oversight team, and Annick, Frauke, and Vivian are the ones who don't lose their way, leaving Hans, Sebastiaan, and John as the leftovers.
I like how one of their ideas was everyone write down 6 traits of things that you're good at.
Now that's how you pick moles.
Yeah.
You write down traits, and then you assign them to people.
I got a huge laugh out of Paula seeing the envelope and thinking it's the $2,500 anyway, just because they tried so hard.
I wrote that down too. Maybe it's the 2,500 euros because we tried so hard in the last challenge.
Half of you sat still and did nothing.
I was thinking, you know, this is a show hosted by Pieter Jan, right? Like, he's like the epitome of no mercy. I mean, he just finished taunting you in a theater, Paula.
For 5 minutes before
Yeah.
launching into a Shatner-esque version of Common People.
Yeah. And
I wonder if there's a Shatner AI.
I also like how Pieter Jan has effectively been the Grim Reaper in the first 2 challenges, because he sneaks up on Mr. Bean as time runs out in the phone booth challenge and just taps him on the shoulder and makes a bit of a jump scare. And then the same thing here, where when it's about 8 seconds left, he slowly ascends to the stage and once again sneaks up on Mr. Bean saying, yeah, this means you lost. If you see me, you've lost the challenge, buddy.
Yeah.
Given that they were on a stage, what they should have done is rigged the microphone up to have a trapdoor underneath it. So when the time ran out, John just disappeared.
Just have Pieter Jan come up stage with one of those giant comedy stage hooks.
Yes.
Just 3, 2, 1, yank.
Funnily enough, also one of Logan's videos. So the 3 that don't lose their way are the drivers, while the leftovers are their passengers. Each car will have numbers on the roof, either a half, 1, or 2, which are the multipliers for the challenge. In the car yard behind him are 10 car wrecks worth €200 each. There is also 1 car worth €1,000. To win the money, they must hit the wrecks with their cars and break the window. However, there are also 2 hunters, and if they're blocked in by the hunters, they are out of the game. And the game ends when all the cars are blocked, all the money is won. And the 3 who have good oversight are stood on top of their big yellow bus, guiding the rest of the group.
Which challenge do you think took longer, this or the theatre? Because this feels like a challenge that was very, very short, even though it's, a big sort of setup sort of thing.
I think probably this, but there wasn't much in it.
Yeah.
Because this is a very rare open-ended time challenge. Obviously, it's not going to be that long because they're going to run out of fuel eventually. But this one, I think, probably felt a little bit longer.
Yeah.
What do you think the best tactic is generally in this?
As a player or as a mole?
Both.
Use the half car to distract the hunters, and then have the too with the actual multipliers. Just go and get all the money.
Yeah, because I think they were very lucky to get the €2,000 car that ended up happening.
And that was Mr. Bean bringing in that money because he figures out the strategy of, oh, wait a second, we should be like the scout car and then shout out where the €1,000 is. I don't think, especially not Paula, would have figured out that strategy.
Oh no, like in the words of the theatre challenge, Paula is dumb 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 dumb.
And I like how he's trying to communicate that to Paula, but because she doesn't know how to use a walkie-talkie, he has to resort to shouting out the window to the opposing teams.
Well, someone else was pressing the button in her defense. There was no way to discipline.
She was probably pushing the button.
Of course there was no ether discipline. It hasn't been invented yet.
Good point.
And I like how, and what was very moly is that Anik in the first challenge is this, has this really good sense of direction, finding the phone booths, and then she gets picked to be a driver for this challenge based on that alone. And then Sebastiaan and Rick both have their racing licenses, and neither of them get to drive any of the cars.
I did get a huge laugh of the other two drivers driving really fast and then Anik not driving fast. And like, to be fair, she did get a red light a couple of days ago.
Good point.
And it was a big deal that there were 3 women drivers, too. Like it had never been done before in the history of Dutch culture.
I will also say about this challenge, this is a very rare Vidum challenge that looks just as fun to do as it is on TV.
Yeah.
I would love to have a go at this challenge.
It's one of those challenges where like the visual is really cool, and it's sort of obviously one of those challenges that sort of came up with the idea of putting it in the opening credits.
Yeah.
But compared to the other 2 challenges in this episode, it's somehow still the weak one.
Mm.
And I think that's mostly because they sort of have a hard time sort of explaining what's going on at any given time.
Yeah. I think actually this sort of a challenge is one that more modern Vidum would have done better, because you would have had the culture of doing an oversight map or whatever. And I think when they did the driving school challenge in Japan the next season, I think they did do an oversight map. So I think this could have used an oversight map of some description. But also I think in terms of technology, they would have had GoPros in all the cars in more modern Vidum, whereas GoPros probably weren't invented in 2008 when this was filmed. So you don't really get as good camera angles from that.
Yeah, I think there's a really big step up in production values from Japan onwards. And I think this is one of those challenges where I think the lack of production values really shines through. Like, great challenge, really fun, really nice visuals. But I think it probably would be done a lot better now than it was back then. Like, it's pretty similar to that one challenge in Georgia with the cars.
Yeah.
And I think they do it a lot better there than they do here. But this is still a really fun challenge.
Yeah, because if you think we were, 2 years away from both Amazing Race and Vidum going HD? I think Amazing Race went HD in 2010 and Vidum went HD from El Salvador onwards, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I think it was 2011 for Amazing Race because it was Unfinished Business, I think, was the first HD season.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what year Unfinished Business was. That was the problem. But they made a big thing of it for Unfinished Business. So, yeah, you're looking around 2011 when Vidum started going HD. I think Pieter Jan made a big deal of it at the start of El Salvador. But I think it probably would have helped this challenge a lot if it was easier to follow visually. And I wonder whether this challenge was part of the impetus for them to consider moving to HD.
Like Sebastiaan noting that Anik was having a tough time, being hesitant to use a 1,200 kilogram car to break a really thin piece of glass.
She drives like a snail.
At least she drives better than Frauke.
Yeah.
He somehow manages to smash a window so hard she gets a tire stuck underneath her car.
I've never heard that happen before.
And bear in mind, Frauke started this challenge not being able to use a gear stick. So Sebastiaan has to change the gear for her.
And then Rick is getting annoyed that Vivian isn't listening to his instructions at all. And I'm thinking, so we have 3 women drivers and now they're being accused of not being good listeners. Completely reversing gender stereotypes in this challenge.
This season is a time capsule. Feminism has come on a long way. So Anik finds the €1,000 car but decides not to hit it as it doesn't waste money then. John can't tell Paula through the walkie-talkie where the €1,000 is, but they communicate it to Dennis verbally and Rick sends his team over there.
And then he yells out that Rosario's mom is calling.
Yeah, one very important fact that we find out at the end of this challenge, everyone's on the same walkie-talkie channel, so Dennis could have just told him himself. I'm sure they agreed not to talk to each other's teams until there was only one left, but they're all on the same channel. This communication could have been a lot easier. So the double team find the €1,000, but a hunter takes them out in the process because Vivienne is an absolute maniac.
She was having the time of her life.
She crashed into that car so hard by the time she finished through the car crash, she ended up on the Irish side of the border.
Yeah, I think if Vivienne hadn't got blocked in by a hunter, she probably couldn't have moved from that €1,000 car anyway, because she floored it.
And then after this challenge, half the cast gets medevac for whiplash, and then they have to bring half of Mexico's cast back.
Yeah.
I was thinking, how many glass shards are just, do they have to, like, jiggle out of their clothing at the end of this challenge?
Yeah, someone gets medevats and Vera has to come in like it's Koh-Lanta.
Oh, she's executed again.
So Rick spots that Dennis's team are hitting the cars at a fair pace. You shouldn't take out your own car in the process. They get stuck on a tyre and are trapped by the hunters as well.
It'd be funny, yeah. There's a tire stuck, or there's a tire stuck underneath the car. One of the camera operators is also stuck underneath the car. Oh, there's Sam Haggins. He's also stuck underneath the car too.
He's running over his mom. And the game ends with Anik and John getting stuck, and a total of €3,200 of 6,000 for the challenge, 3,200 of 13,500 for the episode, and €5,850 of 38,500 for the season so far. And Pieter Jan also spoils their happiness by telling them someone's about to go home.
I love that he comes up and congratulates them for getting the 2,000, and then sort of says they only earned an extra €300 on top of that. And I'm like, what the hell were the other cars doing this whole time?
Well, no, it was there was a mistake on the subtitles. It was actually 3,200, not 2,300.
That makes more sense.
I was wondering, I was thinking, no, I'm pretty sure they earned more than that, but I put faith in the subtitles.
I made that mistake, but I went back and double checked what the pot went up to, and the pot went up by €3,200. So the pot went up to 5,850 of 38,500.
5,850. All right.
Yeah.
The change has been made. Damn you, subtitles.
And then Dennis points out they sort of more than doubled the pot at this point. And Pieter Jan patronizingly agrees, like, yes, gold star for you.
Well, that's what tipped me off to the fact it wasn't 2,300, is the fact that they were on 2,600, 2,650 at that point. So they couldn't have doubled the pot if it was only 2,300 at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pieter Jan's savage quote of, did you have a good time? And what's nice is that you earned some money.
Yeah, good for you.
He's such an asshole.
Pat on the head, yeah. There you go.
It's no secret that this is the best episode of the season so far, purely because Pieter Jan is unhinged and unrestrained.
And we get one of the funniest brief fights in Vidum, where Paula just says, Are we finished? Are we finished the challenge? And then Sebastiaan pipes in on the walkie-talkie, because they're all on the same channel. Typical Paula. How is it possible that we can hear you now, Paula? Screw you, Sebastiaan. Everyone's just done with Paula by this point after all three challenges in this episode, where it's like, Paula, why are you here?
This cast is just batshit insane, and it's the greatest.
But it's like, I don't know, like somebody's like senile grandmother or something, like, are we finished this challenge, John?
Is this done?
Is this done? No, mother.
So, it's now time for the test. 20 questions about the identity and actions of the mole. Whoever knows least goes home, except for the mole who can never go home. Sebastiaan said he made a list of who's lost money, and it Hans and Paula at the top, and they were a team in the phone booths. Hans will go on several people, less on Frauke and more on John. Anik is also suspicious, as is Vivienne. Vivienne's going for a guy. She says John's very fanatical and could easily be the mole, but maybe it could be Rick as well. Frauke thought Paula was being suspicious again today. Again, she wasn't contactable, and the phone box game was completely suspicious too. Annick says she didn't see anything suspicious because she was driving the car. The only thing she knows is how little she heard Paula, especially at crucial moments. Rick's finding it hard. Maybe it's Dennis as his team got blocked in quickly and he blamed his driver. Dennis thinks that it's Paula. She brought nothing in and her team went way over the time limit in the phone box game. It's a huge coincidence, or maybe it's just her fault. Paula says the hardest thing is the mole could have got a red screen if they had an exemption last episode, but it's all or nothing, as it's episode 3, and you now have to pick one person and go for them. Not sure about that.
When there's 9 people left.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Like, this is essentially episode 2, part 2. You don't go all in on one person at final 9, unless you are Jan.
My favourite thing about this whole sequence is at the start of the test, they put like a random shot of some sheep in a field, just in case you forget this is in Northern Ireland. And I'm like, a wrecking yard is the most Northern Irish place that they've been to all season so far.
Yeah.
The sheep just make no sense because they're still at the wrecking yard when they do the test and the execution. And I presume they're not just standing out on the side of the car lot. So I don't know why they've stuck that shot of the sheep in for no reason.
What's with Northern Ireland and wreckages?
Yeah, it's the theme of the first half of the season.
And my favorite part from when they're all taking the quiz is after they fill out the 20th and final question, who was the mole? Paula just loudly calls out to producers saying, where's the next question? I don't see another question on my screen. Is there a question 21?
Are we finished?
And ironically, we're not actually finished with the test segment, because I've still got to say, and John's number 1 is Dennis. He was at the bottom, but his behaviour with Frauke's book was suspicious.
I think, did it record? Because I think I may have typed my name with an E at the end instead of an A. Will it still count?
I spelled my name with an upside down 6.
Do you know what the funniest bit of the execution for me was?
That there's no introduction from Pieter Jan and he's just on a mission to crush someone's soul like a car wreckage.
He's like, so I haven't done Rick yet, have I? I'm like, you're about the only person in this entire show's history who hasn't done Rick.
The thing that made me laugh right at the start of the execution was they all walk out of the barn where they've done the test. And because of the slightly low resolution and the fact that his skin colour is the way it is, Sebastiaan looks like he's topless. Because he's changed into some sort of really light pink vest. And it looks like he's wearing absolutely nothing on his top half. So it looks like he's just kind of so casual at the execution that he's just gone, yeah, I'll get the topless, whatever.
Yeah, I'll take your word for it.
And as a result, we get to see a lot of his terrible back tattoo.
Are there any hooks in there?
It covers the hook portion, unfortunately. Maybe that's how eventually, if Sebastiaan gets executed, they're just going to, pull him up into the air like he's on 101 Ways to Leave a Game Show. It's
just like Mo Sislak with that big air fan that he just swoops down and picks him up and takes him away.
Yeah. So Pieter Jan says, with no introduction, that he's not filled Rick's name in before. So does that straight away, and it's green. He asks for volunteers from those who haven't seen their screen yet, and Hans is the second to volunteer, and he's the second person sent home with a red screen. And Sebastiaan says that he feels bad for Hans because he's going to go home, open his bag and find Frauke's book in there. He should have said something about his suspects. He says he was too careful, but has a little time to think about what happens before he finds out who the mole is. You watch Veerstemmol at home, but that doesn't mean that you will find them.
There were a lot of flashback shots for Hans. I think he got more than basically all of Cambodia's people combined.
Yeah, I thought Saunders would appreciate all of the flashback scenes for his montage. Because he got about 6 or 7.
How did he not come back for Renaissance?
He also gets to, his little walk into the sunset moment is the most awkward Theresa May march ever.
Like he's walking through a field of wheat.
Yeah. It is, so sort of robot learning to take his first steps that it just cracked me up the entire time I was watching it.
I was just learning to mull.
So next time, they go hunting for keys near a footbridge. Pieter Jan starts the bidding at €3,000. Rick kicks a ball down a hill, and Sebastiaan loses something.
My favorite thing is Hans finding €2,500 in his bag after Pieter Jan told him to look in his bag.
Yeah.
It's just a reward because he tried so hard.
Yeah. But in the end, he doesn't really matter. He gone.
Yeah. I mean, nice enough guy, but not a big character, really.
I didn't really notice him much. Did we really talk about him at all in these 3 episodes?
I knew he went in this episode, and he was not in this episode much.
Yeah. Like, he gets, a couple of little moments. Like, he's the one crawling around in the theater. He's the one with the weird, like, little squatty run in the warehouse. But really, he doesn't say a lot, and he doesn't really do a lot either, which makes it a little bit hard for them to give him sort of any airtime. But, like, that they could have given him maybe a couple of confessionals and just take some away from Dennis or Sebastiaan. Mostly Sebastiaan, because let's be honest, Sebastiaan needs to shut the F up. But, like, this is... I think he was just overshadowed in this particular cast. He might have been good in another season.
I do think it's quite interesting that I think, at the end of the episode where it goes, and tune in tomorrow to hear Hans' thoughts on his exit or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's his radio show.
Yes, it is.
Which means he's basically doing what Jan Willem did in Hong Kong, Philippines. So he, technically, the next day after that episode aired, will have had to interview himself.
I gone.
So, Hans, what did you think about that? Well, I thought it was great.
Oh, we have a caller, listener question. It's from Paula. No, Paula, no. Stop pressing.
Yeah. Paula,
stop pressing.
Speak into the phone. Speak into the phone, love.
Stop pressing the buttons, Paula. We can hear you.
Turn the phone the other way up. You're speaking into the earpiece.
Yeah. You're holding it upside down. No, the other upside down. Okay.
I'm just impressed you managed to get through to the station.
Yeah, Paula, you've put me on speakerphone. I can hear myself.
Yeah.
There's a feedback loop.
Yeah.
So, let's wrap this shit up. I'm tired. Final 2 questions. Who do you suspect's honest and who's going home?
And who's the sneaky Belgian?
Yeah, and also who's the sneaky Belgian, but that's heavily implied.
So Anik is still number 1 just because of, I'm really good at directions. Now I'm going to drive the 0.5 multiplier vehicle and not be very good at it. And then ensure that the people who are much better drivers don't even get behind the wheel in this challenge. And then Frauke has jumped up a bit for me, then Sebastiaan, then Rick, then Vivian. Vivian is still my secret Belgian. And then Dennis, and then it was Hans. And then because of everything that transpired this episode, I'm like, yeah, Paula can't be the mole. And then Mr. Bean, because Mr. Bean was the only one that was bringing in money this episode. Without Mr. Bean, they would have been close to 0, because he figured out the strategy for all 3 challenges and had to essentially do the work of 3 people in the first phone booth challenge, because neither Frauke nor Paula knew how to dial numbers on a phone.
Yeah. And who's going home?
Who is going home? You would think it would be Paula. I think Paula's going to go home.
Okay, interesting.
Because I think she's just going to turn off her laptop after 10 questions, thinking, I think it's 10, right? Not 20?
She can't turn off the laptop because somebody else is pushing down the button.
Yeah. Wait, you mean the timer's still going if I get up to use the bathroom during the quiz?
I can't remember who you said was going to go home in this episode. I know you said Hans after episode 1.
Let's say I said Hans after episode 2.
Yeah, we'll give you partial credit. Anything else you want to say about this episode?
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a fun episode.
It is. It's a fun episode where all 3 challenges are very good ones.
Yeah. It's definitely the best of the Northern Ireland episodes.
Yeah, next week not so much.
Yeah.
I like that Pieter Jan just had no BS in the execution, said, I could make a long speech, but I'm not going to. I know there's only going to be a maximum of 2 names I'm typing in, and that's it.
So, thank you for listening to our VSTML 2009 recap. We'll be back next week to continue the hunt for an old mole in Northern Ireland and Jordan. Don't forget you can contact us on pretty much every social media platform that isn't TikTok at RTV Warriors, or you can email us and contact at rtvwarriors.com. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/RTV Warriors and get early access to the rest of the episodes of this season. Thank you as always to Marika for the subtitles, and we'll see you next week.
Peace out and just chill till the next flavoring.
That's not a stick shift, but you can double it.